Welcome to Jurassic Park.
I'm not even supposed to be here today.
I'm just a fucked up girl who's looking for my own peace of mind.
Welcome to the party, pal.
I'll be back.
I'll have what she's having.
I'm gonna make him an offer again.
Here's looking at you, kid.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
All right, Mr. DeMille, I'm ready for my close-up.
Hello, I'm your host, Jim McLean. Welcome back to another episode of More Than Pixels on a Screen, a spoilerific movie review podcast brought to you by Banterflix, cinematic discussion with a Northern Irish accent. Now, listeners, it's, as promised, a second helping dollop of our Ramble and Custard edition of the podcast, our monthly roundup of some of the things we've seen, the newer movies, we should say, on the big screen and on the small screen, particularly on this week's episode. I don't want to ramble with anybody else other than the lovely Adam What's Happening Neeson.
I like that the dollop catchphrase, of course, is going to catch on and we're going to have top merchandise for it, but it's from a podcast that just doesn't exist. Just lost to time.
Someone needs to make it happen. But yes, this is a second serving because I in particular have been stuck at home throughout July. And for the first couple of weeks of August, it's still going to be the same. I'm not venturing out too much. Listen back to previous podcasts for why. So we had loads of films that we wanted to talk about, particularly you, Adam. So I think we'll get stuck straight into it. And we're a movie review podcast. Shock horror. Within minutes of starting this episode, for possibly the first time ever, we're going to get straight into a movie review. So you wanted to talk about MaXXXine, the third part of Ty West's X trilogy. And before we hear your thoughts, let's play a little clip.
Adult film and entertainment, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm curious, did you always want to be in that line of work?
I always wanted to be famous.
So, if you don't mind me asking, why come here and do this?
Well, I've always had a larger vision for myself. Realistically, porn can only take me so far. I'm gonna be 33 years old pretty soon, and in hardcore, women age like bread, not wine. I'm not where I want to be yet. I want the good life. I figure acting is acting. I can do just as good of a job as any of those other blondes out there.
Is that your real accent?
Yes, ma'am.
So that's a clip of MaXXXine. Adam, you went to see this. You weren't a well boy. Listen back to the previous podcast. But what was your thoughts on the film?
It's funny that you said I wanted to talk about MaXXXine because I actually wanted to talk about MaXXXine from EastEnders and how she pushed Barry down the hill.
Well, as you know, isn't it Sean Humphreys?
Sean Williams?
Sean Williams is a good friend of the show, even though I've completely forgotten his name.
Well, here, see if you ever wanted a man to sing Mustang Sally. He'll do it for the low price at 22 quid on Cameo.
He will indeed, and also regular viewers for the TV show will know that Big Barry joins the likes of Paul Chuckle, I'll say. I think that was the correct Chuckle brother, in turning on the Banterflix studio lights around Christmas time. Sean started that trend. So there we go. Big Barry from EastEnders, when he's not getting pushed down off a cliff and he's not singing Mustang Sally, he's and quizzing as well. He's turning on the Banterflix lights in the studio in Belfast.
I think I've spoken about this before on the podcast. The extras, when he goes to eat the muffin from Stephen Merchant's hand, and he goes, "Hello, you." But MaXXXine, Jim. Like you said, third entry in the X trilogy by Ty West, starring everybody's favourite little scamp, Maya Goth. This I did review for the Fright Club, so if you want a more intelligible review, go over and read that. But for here, it is a movie that takes inspiration from things like Angel. Do you ever see Angel?
Not the TV series.
No, it's the girl who goes undercover as a stripper, but she also solves crimes, from 1984. Also takes inspiration from stuff like Fight Squad.
Striptease with Demi Moore. Listen back to previous podcast.
You don't have to watch that, but yeah. Listen to the pod, not to watch the movie. Fight Squad, great movie, and also takes a little touch from Bill Fichtner's Cruising with Pacino. Um, I was really impressed with MaXXXine. I'm a big fan of the other two movies. I think X is still the best of them, but then again, that sort of 70s grindhouse aesthetic plays better to me than a 80s sort of Brian De Palma-esque slasher does. I had a lot of fun with MaXXXine. I think aesthetically, it achieves Once Upon a Time in Hollywood level of throwback on fucking 2% of the budget of that movie. Like MaXXXine was made for I think it's like $2 million, and it's like impossible to tell because it really feels like you're watching a movie from the 80s. And like I said in my written review, the 80s in the last 10 years, 10, 15 years has become Stranger Things-esque, where it's a lot of synth music and neon lights, whereas MaXXXine kind of takes an approach of making the movie feel like how it would have felt if it was made in 1980, rather than giving it the nostalgia coat of paint. Everybody's good in it. Maya Goth's great. Kevin Bacon plays Jack Nicholson in the Two Jakes sort of character, and it's a good time. Third act sort of falls apart, and I've seen a lot of people say third act kind of drops the ball in what the movie was trying to set up, but I thought it was fun. If you've seen any sort of 80s sleazy Hollywood movie, you know that the third act of those movies are often a little bit out there, so it's on point to what they were going for. But yeah, it's a great trilogy. If they wanted to return back to the MaXXXine character or the world of X, I'd happily take a fourth one.
You think they will?
It leaves it open. I'll say that at the end of the movie, it sort of leaves it open that you could. There isn't a definitive end, but there also is a happily ever after. But when's that ever stopped Hollywood from making another movie? Especially because they're so cheap to make. Like X, Pearl, and MaXXXine collectively cost $5 million to make 3 movies, and has made over $50 million collectively. So why a studio wouldn't hit up Ty West to be like, do you want to make something else in a similar ilk of this? It's not to be I hate when fucking talking about Deadpool in the previous podcast, where fucking the common man on the street is talking about, well, Fox Studios got deleted by Disney. I hate talking about movies as in, they print money, but there is no fucking. It's show business, not business show, or whatever the phrase is.
Well, I remember you talking before about the new Strangers movie, made for next to nothing, and I think it's just kind of essentially a remake and all but names of the first Strangers film, which I think in August is getting re-released on DVD and Blu-ray, if I remember off the top of my head. I think we got the press release in for that. Haven't seen that film in a long time, and I think a lot of the cost from this trilogy comes from the fact that X and Pearl were pretty much shot back to back, and that keeps costs down. So I would say a large bulk of that is possibly with MaXXXine, which I haven't seen, busting to see. I'm a massive fan of Mia Goth. I think she's a great performer. I loved her in the remake of Suspiria, although that was a very bleak film, I have to say. Sitting at 8 o'clock in the morning at the London Film Festival many, many years ago, eating a bacon bap, watching terrible, horrible, nasty things happen to her on screen in a film that is brilliant in its own right, but it's just nowhere near as fun as Argento's. Looking at the trailer, I guess, the look and feel of, I suppose, maybe more the later stage of Argento's back catalogue, maybe what some might deem the less impressive section of his back catalogue. There's a look and style to that, and I'm all for it. I'm looking forward to seeing it. I've probably missed it in the cinema. I might have to watch it at at home, which brings me nicely to our next movie. Because as I said in the previous pod, I've been off, I've been ill. I had surgery at the beginning of the month. Slight complication has meant that I've been homebound. Not homebound, but just been pretty much hospitals, various tours of various hospitals. But I got to see Beverly Hills Cop 4. And I will say I watched it. I was on a lot of medication. I enjoyed it, and I know you've seen it as well, Adam. So I think before we go into talking about Beverly Hills Cop 4, I can't do a laugh. Eddie Murphy laugh, but I'll come back to that. Let's play a clip of the film.
What are you staring at? What is this, a union job? Well, we don't give OSHA breaks here. Move, bitch!
Who sent you up here?
Who the hell do you think?
Beck?
No, LeBron James. Yes, Beck! Look, he's been riding my ass about this shit, so I'm gonna ride y'all's ass. Y'all know how the motherfucker gets.
Definitely do.
Fucking bullshit.
Check this out. First Blood.
What the hell?
This is you.
Nah, man, that's not me. That's that actor Wesley Snipes. Everybody say I look just like him. I don't look nothing like Wesley. That Wesley's a handsome motherfucker, ain't he?
So that's a little clip of Beverly Hills Cop 4. You've seen this, Adam. I've seen this. I actually was that bothered. I wrote a review for the website about this, and I thought Beverly Hills Cop 4 was perfectly serviceable. It's probably my favourite since Beverly Hills Cop 2. No one really wants to talk about Beverly Hills Cop 3. Everyone seems to bring up Beverly Hills Cop 3 with Eddie Murphy, and he pretty much goes, yeah, we dropped the ball. And I think there's an interview he gave where he kind of said he knew the film was going to be shit because there's the line in it which he says it's always one of those rules that actors say, they never want to say the line in Beverly Hills Cop 3 where he turns to someone and says, don't you die on me, man. And he was like, that's what he said. Yeah, it was going to be shit. But I bet at the time he didn't say that on the press tour for the film. But anyway, what did you think? We have him, we have Eddie Murphy coming back. He's not young, peak comedic masterclass that we get from Eddie Murphy in some of his early roles in the 80s, and particularly in his stand-up. I know you're a stand-up as well, Adam, so interesting to see what you think about that. But, it's classic kind of requel stuff. He's coming back, all the old faces are back there. Nice to see them back. But here he's coming to save his estranged daughter who's had enough of Axel's shit. She's now a lawyer. She's working in Beverly Hills and she finds herself on the wrong side of crooked cops and the cartel. It's fine. It doesn't hold a candle to the Tony Scott stuff. I mean, Tony Scott is just a great action movie filmmaker. He can do an action sequence in Beverly Hills Cop 2 with a cement mixer. I think I always thought for years it was a school bus, but rewatching it when I was off and sick, I'm nearly certain it's a concrete truck. So cement mixer. It's fine. A lot of action sequences, a lot of standard kind of plot A, plot B, jigsaw puzzle in terms of narrative. I thought it was fine.
Yeah, the first one directed by Martin Brest, who did Midnight Run, is a bona fide classic. It is one of those movies that is the perfect mix of a writer and director working with their star at the height of his power to create some grip. Second one, like I say, Tony Scott. It's got fucking Tony Scott all over it. And a line I'll always quote, fuck Rambo. It's fantastic. Third one, I really enjoyed when I was a kid because of the theme park of it all. I'm a big theme park man, Jim. And, it sort of was a kidified Axel. So as a kid, I enjoyed it more. Whereas when I went back and rewatched it, as an adult, it was like, so they're printing money? What's that? What do you mean? Fourth one, very much enjoyed. It is basically, sort of a remake of the first one. But if you're going to do any of these legacy sequels, this sort of is the way to do it. It's not, they don't try too hard. They know that Eddie Murphy's an older man. and they don't push him. It's not like Die Hard 4 where he's fucking hanging off the back of a jet. Even though there is a bit with helicopter in this that's very funny, but they play that for laughs rather than be a big, massive action scene.
You've mentioned the helicopter sequence. That's the one that really didn't work for me, because it seems to be a film they've tried to kind of, particularly with what Scott did in Beverly Hills Cop 2, to do a lot of stuff as practically as they can. There's a great sequence early on in Detroit where where Axel pretty much just destroys half of Detroit, it seems. And you're waiting all the time, and I will mention this, you're waiting for that classic Eddie Murphy laugh, but he himself has said he has stopped doing that laugh because that's what people use to do their impressions of Eddie Murphy. They say pretty shit dialogue or repeat a little bit of dialogue that sounds nothing like him, and then throw in the Eddie Murphy laugh. Oh yeah, fuck yeah, Eddie Murphy, that's doing the impression. So it's sad when you don't hear it. I always love that in the first two films, that kind of classic laugh, that big smile his character has. But he's not, you've mentioned he's an older man. He's definitely not as, in terms of his physicality, he's not as energetic a performer. But hey, we're all at that stage. That happens to us all with age. But I thought this was fine. I think in terms of, like, it's kind of plot heavy and it's contrived. As you've mentioned, Adam, you get that from all of these legacy sequels. You have to have the phone call, Axel, you've got to get back to Beverly Hills. It's your daughter. You got to get back, Axel. You seem to like that helicopter. Without going into spoilers, there's a huge, big sequence where Axel and one of the newer characters, although he's just a kind of, for me, a kind of parody or kind of a new version of Rosewood in Joseph Gordon-Levitt, they steal a helicopter to escape a crooked cop who may or may not be played by Kevin Bacon. But I thought it was fine. That sequence didn't work for me.
It's a sequence that I was just glad that it was more of a joke than it was, we're taking a helicopter through LA. Like Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character having PTSD and Eddie just shouting at him the whole time is funny to me. But like you said, doing practical effect stuff, there was a little bit of ropey CGI, which you can let it go. It's harmless. I watched it with my girlfriend who had never seen any of the Beverly Hills Cop movies.
What movies has she seen, Adam?
Barbie and the Twilight Princess. She really enjoyed it. She was like, because I think the last Eddie Murphy movie we watched was that Christmas one. I can't even remember the name of it. That was on Amazon Prime. And, if you were to be like, Eddie Murphy's one of my heroes, right? Stand-up wise. If I was to be like, he's one of my heroes, come on, we watch this new movie because he's really funny. And I showed you that Christmas movie, you'd be like, Adam, why do you like this, man?
Well, do you know what I'll throw in terms of legacy sequels? Beverly Hills Cop 4 is head and shoulders above his legacy sequel to Coming to America. There was a film that I sat and literally actually got cross watching it. It's just so devoid of any comedy, any laughs. And I know we had the Sixth Sense guys on at the time. I think that was over lockdown, or around the pandemic. We recorded with them remotely, like we are here on this recording. And I just got very angry about that film. Here it's like, right, it's more confident in itself, knows what it wants to be, knows what it wants to do, knows all the kind of things that it has to kind of, the boxes it has to check. I mean, there's some great action sequences. The shootouts are over the top. There's one I think's great on I think it's just in the streets of Beverly Hills with Eddie Murphy and his daughter, and then we get to see what a kind of pastiche of Rosewood Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character is, because he knows how to take down the cartel.
There's a lot of comparisons with this to the latest Bad Boys movies. It's not the Michael Bay of it all. There is a little bit more characterness to the main cast. And I haven't seen Bad Boys 4 yet. I know it came on VOD last week. I'm looking forward to watching that. But those guys were meant to make Beverly Hills Cop 4, and I just wonder if any of their fingerprints was kind of left over from their pitches of what the movie was going to be, because I remember they made a Beverly Hills Cop TV show. Do you remember they made a pilot that was about like Axel Foley's son, and Axel turned up to like, give him advice, and I think Eddie Murphy was the guy that was like, "This is so bad, we cannot put this out." So it's clearly a character, sort of like Harrison Ford with Indiana Jones. You know, it's a character where the main star is really invested, and that's always nice to hear, because if you're going to have legacy sequels, you know, there's been so fucking many legacy sequels that they're like, we got this original character back, and you're like, you got that character back because the guy needed money. You know what I mean? If you're making a Starship Troopers movie and you have Casper Van Dien back, there's only one reason that man needs money, because he needs to pay the rent. He's not coming back for anything else. But I would say, like yourself, this is better than Coming to America. It's better than Indiana Jones Dial of Destiny. And it has it. If they were to make a fifth one, perfectly fine. I would say, yep, that would be fun. Might overstep it, but if they actually went back and kind of did what they did with Tony Scott in the second one, and had a director come in and kind of give, you know, a little bit of an artistic feel, or a little bit of a different feel, just a more of a, imagine like you'd never do it, but imagine like an Edgar Wright Beverly Hills Cop, you know, something a little bit quick and snappy, since the main star isn't a snap anymore. Maybe the movie itself needs to be, you know, quicker.
Bring back Bridget Nielsen. That's all you need as well for Beverly Hills Cop 5.
Now, who's Bridget Nielsen when he's at home?
Bridget Nielsen. That's the girl. Is she not Bridget Nielsen's the big tall blonde girl in Beverly Hills Cop 2?
Yes. Was she married to Stallone?
Yes, she was.
Is she in Rocky 4?
Yes, she is.
Well, you've just blown my mind, because whenever I was a kid, I was always like, the girl in Beverly Hills Cop 2 looks like the girl in Rocky 4, and it's only now at the age of 31 I've went, oh, it's the same person.
Good for you, Adam. Good for you. Yeah, I enjoyed Beverly Hills Cop 4. As I say, I was watching it, I was feeling pretty lousy, and was doing a thing of like, I don't want to lie in bed, I'll get up. And my wife and my lovely mum, who looked after me the first couple of days after coming out of surgery, we sat and watched it, and at no point did we get bored, no point did anyone go, like my mum at no point turned to me and go, what's this all about? And my wife seemed to enjoy it, and I think she's seen Beverly Hills Cop, she hasn't seen 2 or 3. And I, after that, went back and watched 1 and 2. I'm not going to rewatch 3. I'm not going to waste my time. Sorry, John Landis. You've done enough crimes in cinema. That's one that we don't need to talk about. But yeah, Beverly Hills Cop 4. It's out on Netflix. Shame it's not on the big screen. I think it would have found an audience. But hey, this is just the way the world works now. So, another film that was out. I don't know if it got a wide release over here in Northern Ireland. And that is Chuck Chuck Baby. Now, I am going to ask Adam, did you hear anything about this? Do you know any cinemas screening Chuck Chuck Baby?
I have not heard of it, apart from you mentioning it.
So Chuck Chuck Baby, I saw last year at the Edinburgh International Film Festival. I interviewed the writer and director, Janis Pugh. Great interview. After that, I will play that interview very shortly. The basic premise for the film, it's set in Wales. We have a young woman, from memory, her name is Helen. She is separated from her partner, her husband, but still, because of economics, they still live together. She cares for her mother-in-law. She's working at a chicken factory, the aforementioned Chuck Chuck Baby. A next-door neighbour who she grew up when she was younger moves back to the town, starts working at the company, and they renew their friendship and possibly more. So LGBTQ elements within the narrative. We're talking on the previous pod about Belfast Pride, which happened last week. And into that mix as well, you've got a musical. So we have sequences where they'll be working in the factory and it'll go into a full-on musical number. I was really charmed by this. I watched it with an audience who lapped it up, really enjoyed it. It's sweet when it wants to be. It pulls on the heartstrings when it wants to. The music does a lot of heavy lifting, and it's that kind of like dreamlike quality. So when they're talking, they just suddenly go into song. And it's like, is it in someone's head or is it happening? It's just the joy of cinema. And I know on the previous podcast, Adam, we were talking about stop motion, a film that I said maybe I watched it. I have seen it since and I still like it. I know you don't like stop motion as much as I did. Go back to the previous podcast. But part of me maybe wonders, did I get caught up in the moment listening to an audience that was clearly being there with an audience that was there to enjoy it with a lot of cast and crew? The fact I got a chance to sit down with the director, who I thought was great, was a little bit hungover, as was I, when we sat down to do the interview. And I'll be interested if you get round to seeing it. It's a bit like Thelma, the film I was talking about on the previous recording. Thelma's definitely getting a bigger release than some. But this, again, is just one of those, it's a perfect feel-good film for if you're having a lousy Sunday. Don't know always why Sunday's always the day of full shitness. Because you're going back to work on a Monday. And I just think it's a film that tries to put a smile on your face, wears its heart unashamedly on its sleeve. And I'll always back those films. It's not big budget. It's one of those films, and I'm going to sound patronising when I say this, and I don't mean to be, because I'm very aware we are two lads from Northern Ireland who happen to talk a lot of nonsense, talk a lot about shiting on this podcast, this movie review podcast. But sometimes you go, and it maybe doesn't happen as much now in the age of streamers, but in the 10 or 11 years I've been doing this website, it's been that long, that you will go and watch a film at a festival, whether it's Belfast, Edinburgh, Fright Fest. I know we're going to have Gav from the Fright Club talking about some of his Fright Fest picks for the London Festival. It's happening later this month. But sometimes you see a film that you love. You never hear from it. You never see it again. And you talk about a film and you're like, it's really hard to get a hold of. Like a more recent example, I'm glad to see, I think it's on Netflix now, is the follow-up by the directorial duo that did Goodnight Mommy. I think their film The Lodge is now available on Netflix. Again, it won't be for everyone, I know that, but there's a film that just seemed to disappear and then suddenly has reappeared on Netflix, and I would recommend seeking it out. If you like, we were talking about Long Legs on the previous pod. We'll not get into a review of The Lodge. I don't know if you've seen it or not yet, Adam, but dark, really downbeat, horror, creepy movie, psychological, hints of cults, like we mentioned with Long Legs. It's darker in kind of in a way, but we're not here to talk about that film. But in that sense, in my rambly way, this is my ramble, it's nice that a film like Chuck Chuck Baby doesn't just disappear. It does get widespread release. Maybe not over here in Northern Ireland, so it might be a case you have to find it online, VOD. And on that note, I think it's a perfect point to play my interview with Janis Pugh last year from the Edinburgh Film Festival.
Eyes down on the line, 4 nights down, 1 to go!
You remember Helen from the home, Joe? She was at school with us.
It's been 20 odd years. It's funny, what is? This is the first time we've ever talked.
Snoopians against the law.
You like her? You've been hiding away too long.
What is going on with those two? Oh.
I'm not a great believer in love.
We must have believed in it once upon a time.
Women like us, we live by the clock. Spend every day serving someone.
Can't escape from what you are around here.
Nobody wants you!
I'm always going to be this girl, and you are always going to be desperate.
I'm not being funny, but can someone grab that creepy doll?
We can be so much more than what they think we are.
So that's a clip of Chuck Chuck Baby, and I'm joined now by the film's writer and director, Janis Pugh. Janis, do you want to tell our listeners, as much as you want them to know going in to see this film, what it's all about?
Well, Chuck Chuck Baby is kind of, it's a film that celebrates female working class love in all its forms. It's about friendship, it's about camaraderie, and ultimately it's a love story set in a lovely magical world of realism. But the heart of the film is really about the women who are in it.
I've watched the film. I got sent a screen. I know it had its world premiere last night here at the Edinburgh International Film Festival. We're the day after that. How's the feelings? We were saying before this interview started, we're both a little bit hungover. So we may as well be honest with our listeners at this stage. So I'm gauging then with a hangover. Well, we can't tell. I mean, I imagine it's a hangover from a night of just enjoyment last night.
Yes, it was a fantastic. It was. Do you know what? It couldn't have gone better. It was a great screening. The reaction from the audience was just wonderful. The film is so full of heart, and I think the audience in Edinburgh are always full of heart. It was a real celebration. So yes, just a little bit hungover.
It's okay. You're looking fabulous, darling. You're looking fabulous, darling. I watched the film, as I say, on a screener. You've mentioned heart. I mean, there's no denying that. I think I scribbled down in my notes that I've got here in front of me. It's a film that unashamedly wears its heart on its sleeve, which is a film I personally will always back, but also has the radio up loud, because this is a musical of sorts. I mean, it is a musical. I mean, there is nods without a doubt to the classic era, the golden age of Hollywood. But I wanted to ask, we have the film. It is a musical, but I wanted to ask a bit about the idea for the music. So we have our actors, who we haven't mentioned at this stage. I know we will have to get round to discussing them, particularly who's on screen. But having your actors both singing on screen and also singing on screen, but also having the original music behind. Because I can't think off the top of my head of having seen that before. Was that always the idea from day dot, and just kind of, I suppose, the decision behind that?
Yeah, it's part of my work. It's part of my format. I always use the music as a part of the narrative. So from the moment I start creating the story and the script, very similar to a musical, the music goes in first, and it kind of shapes the story along with the characters. So my approach has always been, we use the original music, but we use it in the same fashion as I suppose we would use music as we kind of, in times of loss or in times of love, sometimes we sing along. But it's very instinctive, and it's very you kind of know when you're writing it, and you're writing it into the script when the actor should sing, when they shouldn't sing. And we start from there, and it's very important. I always spoke to the girls, I should say Louise Brealey and Annabelle Scully. It's very interesting, because the approach is always, don't sing, feel. Very reflective of the emotions of the characters, and very reflective of for the audience, informs the audience of their backstory and where their present emotions are at the moment. Yeah,
there's one sequence in particular. I think it's Louise in the car early on, which is like, okay, I can kind of see what you're going, and that kind of carries on to an almost, I don't want to go into spoilers because the film's only had its world premiere, I'm not going to spoil it, but we have kind of, I don't know if it's a slight nod to an officer and a gentleman of sorts in the film's finale. I don't know, you're laughing at me, so I don't know if you're laughing at me in a sense of, really, Jim, that's where you're going to go in this, or it's a sense of like, yeah, I see where you're going.
Yeah, I mean, I think if there's a factory scene that's going to be the ending, it's going to be the officer and gentleman, isn't it? Beautiful ending. Yeah, I didn't even think of that, to be honest with you. I really didn't. For me, it was just, I worked in a chicken factory many years ago. Many years ago, Jim. I lasted 8 days.
8 glamorous days, I'm sure.
But my sisters, obviously, I come from a very small little Welsh town on the border of Chester and kind of Liverpool. Hence my little Scouse accent. And, there's always a sense of, for me, if it was ending the film, I had to be in that setting, had to be in the factory with that community around them.
I want to go back, because we've talked about the film, we've talked about the world premiere, we've talked about some of the cast that are involved in front of the camera as well. We've talked a little bit about what the film's all about. This was your second feature, I think, if I'm correct. I know you've done...
Feature.
Yeah.
I used to work a lot with Central School of Speech and Drama, and do a lot of for their MA in acting. So this is my first official feature.
How you mentioned you worked for 8 glamorous days in a chicken factory. I mean, we could talk about that for a whole podcast. I'm sure those were 8 memorable days for both the right reasons and wrong reasons. Obviously, because we have a film now where probably you're drawing on those memories from that experience. But to go back to the genesis of this, where was the idea for this? And then how did it mothball into what we and audiences have watched here at Edinburgh and audiences in the future will get a chance to see?
Well, I wanted to write a film about 2 women who had suffered emotional and abuse and brutality in their past, and kind of come together in their present lives. I wanted to make a film about women in their 40s, and I wanted to make a film about love. I felt the world was going a little crazy, and I thought, you know what, let's bring some love into it. And I really wanted to highlight these small communities that we don't really get to see a lot of. The film was entirely shot in my home area, all the locations of my playground places. And I thought to myself, you know what, the world's gone slightly not very nice.
You can swear if you want.
The world's fucked up. I'm going to tell a love story. And and that's where it started.
Yeah, as I say, it's a very sweet film. It's a phrase I always go to. I will always back a film that wears its heart on its sleeve, and this does on particularly. One thing you've mentioned the central 2 relationships that we have, the central 2 characters and the relationship between them 2. I also wanted to talk about the relationship with Helen and her mother-in-law, because I thought that was some of the moments that have stuck with me from watching it. I mean, it's Saoirse Cusack playing that Irish actress, Belfast kind of Irish connections in there. Just kind of, can you talk us through a little bit about those scenes, filming those scenes and that relationship, the importance of putting that in to the film, and I guess having it as a mother-in-law and daughter relationship. I don't know, was that a conscious choice from day dot to have that? And just kind of talk us through a little bit about that as well.
Yeah, those scenes are really beautiful. And I think for anybody who is kind of sat with somebody towards the end of their life, there are moments of very great humour and moments of great sadness. For me, it was important that Helen's backstory of growing up in a home and, her security later in life became Gwen. And half the reason she's still there is because of Gwen. There's a beautiful love between them. And those 2 amazing actors, Louise and Saoirse, was just like, this film was shot in 26 days. There was very little rehearsal. In fact, there was hardly anything in rehearsal time. And, we were lucky to get 3 takes on our schedule. And they were just lovely together. There was a warmth that is so natural between them. And I think, people say to me it's a love story, there's some grief in there. And I think anybody in life, and I think all our lives are all affected by this roller coaster, this production line of emotion. And Helen's life is that kind of production line where she's happy, she's sad, there's love and there's grief. It's life.
I think it's a lovely line. Is it just a constant with Gwen, the tick-tock? Everything's always ticking away. Coming back to the fact that I've already mentioned that I know you said it wasn't there, The Officer and the Gentleman. Did you have anything that you came into mind as mood prints, anything when you were trying to discuss the film with your cast and crew, I suppose producers as well? I don't know, again, I'm going to throw another one at you. Then this might be the kind of the opening sequence with a dandelion. I could not think of American Beauty, the sense the kind of that little kind of beautiful little dandelion floating in, and you've got that almost fairy tale-esque kind of opening. I think it's not the Star Wars opening line a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, but I think it's a time ago. I think I've written it down here. In a land not far away, that sense. So there is a kind of fairy tale element. We have that opening, that beautiful kind of, we have the music, and then you've already mentioned this, the earplugs being pulled out, and we're back to reality. Yeah. That was an odd for me. But did you have anything that you came in for mood boards or for inspiration for this?
Not really. I mean, my inspiration for all of my work really comes from my background, and it really comes from, you know, a little factory town. You know, I create a world, and it's a world that I kind of want to... I always want the audience to feel they're going into a dreamlike kind of world, and I love that, because I still love the idea of throwing in magical realism into cinema. But again, the reality of the film is the heart of the film. It's the story itself that will always connect. So for me, blue overalls, my mother and father, they just wore blue overalls. You know, it's my kind of memory, and I love that burst of colour. So production design wise, costume wise, you know, I said to Mandy Cole, the costume designer, it's all block colour as a palette, and you know, and we work that in with the landscape and how it pops out. So, and Caroline Steiner, the production designer, again, it's all about the chickens have to be pink. You know, it's all just these little pop out things, but it's all from my background.
My last question, because I can't keep you here all day. I get a sense we could easily chat, and as I've already mentioned, I want to go back to talk about those at some point, those 8 days working in a chicken factory. But coming across, having just met you, having watched the film, it wears its heart on its sleeve. Yeah. I get the sense you wear your heart on your sleeve as well. So when you throw so much of you into this feature in particular, what were your thoughts then going through your head before everything instigated that led to The Hangover? What was your thoughts going through getting it out there, finally seeing an audience reaction? Because there's nothing truer. I mean, you can show your film to friends, cast, producers, but then to have it sitting there at Edinburgh with an audience, laughing when they're meant to laugh, crying when they're meant to cry. What are the feelings that go through your head? Can you enjoy that moment, or are you like me, where it's 6 months down the line, you allow yourself that little opportunity to enjoy those moments?
I do wear I mean, it's like having open heart surgery, to be honest. It's the only way I've never had it, but I can just feel it, because your heart is pumping, you know, and of course people react differently to different things. It is extraordinary, because you make a film, and you don't make a film for you. You make a film because you want the world to share it, you know. And it's last night, all I could hear was laughter, and then I could hear silence. And you're on that roller coaster with the audience, and it is. I will probably wake up in a couple of weeks and go, wow, you know. By then we're off to Toronto, so you know.
And just on that note, I mean, where will the film, what's the film's journey? Here it's at its world premiere. This is where I guess it starts. You've mentioned Toronto. Can you say at this stage where the film goes beyond there?
I can't say, and I'm not allowed to say. Toronto.
Listener, and she's not even winking. Janis, it has been absolutely lovely. Enjoy. I think we all need to go to a greasy spoon somewhere and get a cup of coffee. And enjoy the film's tour, enjoy the moments from the festival, and thank you very much for your time.
Cheers, thank you very much. Cheers, Jim.
So that's my interview with Janis Pugh about Chuck Chuck Baby. I don't know, Adam. I don't know if I've sold it to you or not. I know we're going to be talking about Fright Fest with Gav, or Gav's going to be doing a little voicer for us about Fright Fest. But you must have seen films over the years from the various festivals, either you've attended or got sent screeners you really like, and then they just disappear. It happens, unfortunately.
Yeah, there is some movies. Like, there's a movie I reviewed early last year that only just got a release on Shudder in the last few weeks, called Chad Gets the Axe, a found footage horror movie that I really enjoyed. But it is one of those things that, you know, they go to film festivals, they get picked up by distributors, then the distributors just sit on them for some reason. And it is a lot of good movies. Like, people say it's a fucking miracle any movie ever gets made, and it's another miracle that anybody ever gets to see it. And it is, you know, it does make me happy that it got a festival play, and you got to see it with a big crowd, because it definitely plays. Movies definitely play better in a crowd. You know, they're made for the cinema. But I really hope that Chuck Chuck Baby gets, you know, wide distribution. I would enjoy seeing it. I do enjoy a good musical.
Well, I will say, not that I go by the gospel of all things Mark Kermode. Mark Kermode reviewed it on The Take, I think that's the pod now, him and Mayo, and he waxed lyrical about it. But again, it might be one of those films you have to seek out. I could well see this. It's got a cinematic release. It might be a case you have to seek out maybe on the BFI player or maybe one of the VOD services, maybe Amazon Prime. Something like that could pop up. And it's weird. I know we're going off tangents here, particularly because I've been at home watching stuff. It's weird how you look at Netflix's top 10 and it's like films that were made like maybe 3-4 years ago suddenly pop up on their service and people are like, fuck, never seen that. That's actually quite a good film. And then word of mouth through social media, I guess, and just people talking, the old water cooler kind of sentimentality. We see films that are quite old films, or some of them maybe in the early noughties, suddenly reappearing in these streaming services and finding a home and finding an audience. I know it's a bit of a rambly tangent. I haven't really given you anything to jump off at that point, Adam, have I?
Well, it's not even like older movies too. I noticed on Amazon Prime that fucking Guy Ritchie's latest movie with Henry Cavill, a movie I think I talked about on a previous Ramble. Don't know if it was the one that wasn't released. That just sort of got farted out into existence on Amazon Prime, and people are really enjoying it because obviously it has a stellar cast. It has fucking Reacher on it. Everybody loves that guy. But if a movie by Guy Ritchie starring Superman can't get a theatrical release and is just playing on Amazon Prime, it's like I said, it's a miracle that any of these small movies, and it is good that certain subscription based channels on Prime like the BFI player pick up these movies, because at least it does end up getting an audience somewhere. People are always looking for those hidden gems,
because there's films like, I know it got a release at the QFT earlier this year, Horde, which I saw last year at the London Film Festival. Brilliant film, probably would have been last year my one of my films of the year, but because it didn't get a distribution release, I kind of said, well, I'll hold it. It was released early this year, fab film, and I think James Oliver and Zara Jackson were waxing lyrical about it before we recorded one of the TV shows early this year, and I got to be that old smug old bastard goes, oh, Horde, you maybe didn't see it, Jim, it's got a limited, oh yeah, seen it last year at London, interviewed the director. That's enough of me being smugly smug. So that stuff. So yeah, Chuck Baby, if you get the chance, if you're a fan of musicals and a musical that can do the musical thing from going from people talking to people singing, it's not really original songs, it's all kind of jukebox stuff. It's great. I like it. So I would recommend seeking it out. I know we're going to do for the first time, Adam, on this pod, that's kind of the reason why we did the 2 parts, the extra helping. I know we're going to do some long form storytelling, some TV shows very quickly before we wrap up. But anything else you want to wax lyrical about just before we move on to the closing stages of this pod?
I'll talk till the end of time about I Saw the TV Glow, finally released in the UK this week. 5-star movie. I wrote a review of it for Fright Club. Go read that. Absolutely transformative movie. A movie that sort of talks about having obsessions in your life that can replace feelings, and there's a lot of people, I'm sure, in our audience can relate to that. And there's the last shot of I Saw the TV Glow is it's what I haven't stopped thinking about since I seen it a month and a half ago, and it's just one of those movies that hit me such on a personal level that I could wax about it all day, telling you how amazing it is, and you might go see it and you feel it shite. But there's a lot of people that have went and seen it and have backed up my feelings on it, so I'm not just going and saying it's great just because I liked it. I know Joe, the Arspert, went and seen it at the QFT at the weekend. I don't know. As of this recording, I was talking to him, and he was saying that he's still trying to process everything he's seen, but he was still blown away by it. And yeah, it's just, it's weird. Justice Smith is an actor. I not that I didn't respect him as such, but he's just been in things like Detective Pikachu and Jurassic World and Dungeons and Dragons, which he was great in. But to see him actually fully get to fucking act properly with some great writing, it's just so good. Honestly, I know this is a Ramble podcast, but if you let me, Jim, I'll talk about it for 2 hours. But go see I Saw the TV Glow. It'll be one of the best movies of the year.
Okay, well, I'm looking forward to seeing it. I don't think it's on VOD just yet. And I think it was Lumi at the QFT did a screening of it. I think the QFT might have picked it up as well for a little bit, but it might be a case I have to watch it on the small screen. But it is on my list of movies I want to talk about. Very quickly, because I was at home and sicky bad no well, I actually just watched a couple of older movies because I've seen that Sky, because I was back home, not like old former Prime Minister Rishi Sunak. My mum got Sky when I was younger, so I was able to go back and watch some movies in Sky, and the old Sky Horror Channel. Watched some guff. I don't know why I put myself through it. Watched Five Nights at Freddy's, which was just a mess of a film. And I also, just in terms of complete opposite, they threw on a couple of Cronenberg films, and I was watching for the first time in ages Videodrome, and just forgot what an amazing film that is, ahead of its time in many ways. And who doesn't want to see someone pushing a VHS through a vagina-like hole in James Wood's chest? Brilliant film. And Blondie herself is fab in it as well. Great film. If you've never seen it, check it out. And yeah, watch a couple of old Cronenberg films when I was at home sick no well. But this is what we thought we'd do. For something for a little bit of a change, caught up on some long-form storytelling, some TV shows, and a few of them. Finally watched Baby Reindeer. That was fine. Caught up on The Boys, and I also caught up on The Acolyte. And I know you've definitely seen The Boys and you've seen The Acolyte. I don't know if you've watched Baby Reindeer or not.
No, it wasn't. It's one of those ones, when you're in work and somebody in the office is like, you'll never believe what happened to that fella, and you're like, I bet you will.
I've done worse to old Marty Scorsese. But anyway, so I don't know, where do you want to go first with? So the Acolyte, I just decided to watch. So kind of Star Wars set. This is the furthest back we've had anything so far. This is kind of set before the events of George Lucas's prequels, and I don't know how I feel about it. I thought it was fine, but there was nothing about it that was outstanding for me. This idea of the characters of these two twins, one struggling with the light, one struggling with the dark, and how that story plays out itself. It felt like a TV show that is kind of trying to explain, say, Anakin Skywalker's immaculate conception in that sense, because there's a reference in The Acolyte where it says there was no father, the twins just we'll not talk too much, but the twins, I was just pregnant. It's like, Anakin's ma tried to tell us that one as well. I'm still a virgin, didn't have sex with Uncle Ben at all. Uncle Owen, sorry, not Uncle Ben.
Uncle Owen's her sister or her brother.
Things worked differently, Adam, a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. Didn't have the same rules.
It's her brother-in-law. It's her brother-in-law, isn't it? Because Lars. Yeah. I don't want the Star Wars nerds coming after us.
But I just thought this was fine. It, like all of the TV shows, a bit like Ahsoka, and I know there was the kind of the Obi-Wan series, Obi-Wan / Darth Vader series. I thought they were fine. I think for me, probably the Obi-Wan's been my favourite of those. That kind of, I know we've had Boba Fett as well, and we've had The Mandalorian. Of those kind of, outside of The Mandalorian, wasn't a big fan of the Boba Fett series. I know there's been a few more animated ones as well. Ahsoka was too, just, it it wasn't really for me. I wasn't a massive fan. There was Rebels, and what was the other one? The Clone Wars. I've been watching those a wee bit post Ahsoka, and I can see why people are so invested in them. This just is another one like that for me. It's fine. There's a cameo of sorts near the end, may or may not be Darth Plagueis, which makes sense considering the timeline. But I mean, Disney haven't even confirmed yet if they're going to renew a second series, which I think at this point tells you everything about the success of that show.
Yeah, it's whenever like full on spoilers, they show Yoda at the end, and when I was watching it, I stood up and went, "Yeah, it's the back of Yoda's head. Yeah, I can't believe it." Just to be a dickhead. It's one of those shows that you can see through the pieces. The High Republic era of Star Wars can be interesting in the right hands, and there is a lot of cool characters here. You have people like Master Soul, you have the Padawan Jackie, you have Yard, and May and Osha are the twins, but the May and Osha of it all and them being central characters, the more the quote-unquote mystery went on, it sort of became less interesting somehow. And their twist in, one of them being good and one of them being bad, flipped on its head by the end, sort of nullifies itself as a storytelling point of view, because spoilers for The Acolyte, they are the same person, they aren't twins. And I know it's sort of, the yin and yang of this character, but, at the start of the series, a woman that looks like May was bad, and then at the end of the series, a woman that looks like Osha is good, and it's kind of, that's all you've got. The politics side of Star Wars can be interesting. Obviously, George Lucas can't do that, but something like Andor can, and can show that that world can be interesting. But the story of The Acolyte kind of just, it felt like a movie, and at any time it cut to the credits, like at the end of an episode, it just sort of felt like somebody pausing the movie and being like, right, see you next week. Great fight scenes. The bad guy, Chimere, fantastic. Him headbutting fucking lightsabers is class. Great fight scene between him and Master Soul at the end. But storytelling wise, it's just not there. And it's odd because, like, costume wise, set design wise, everything aesthetically is cool looking at it, but just the things that the people are saying in the story they're trying to tell just isn't compelling enough. It's not even compelling enough to be like, right, I'll take a second series of this, because is there anybody on that cast now that you would even be interested in seeing apart from Chimere? And that's only because he's a Sith.
Well, I guess there's people will probably be interested with the possibility of Darth Plagueis, but then Darth Plagueis, it's that sense of when you demystify something, if you go, well, this is the character, is it not great to have that one sequence in Revenge of the Sith that everyone remembers and go, there's all you really need to know about Darth Plagueis? And I know there's been some other, it's been expanded, I think, in novels as well. I don't know, it didn't grab me. I watched it when I wasn't bed bound, but I was able to walk from bed to the sofa to the toilet. And it filled a hole during that time period. I did find it a little bit like The Witcher. I guess The Witcher in the terms of the first series is slightly different because, spoiler if you haven't seen that series, but it's a spoiler of sorts, I apologise, where you have a fluctuating timeline going on, and maybe in The Witcher you don't realise that, but the fact that you've got maybe episodes that are present day, then you'll have an episode that's going back and forth, I found it not confuddling, but it's like, all right, okay, so this, that, and other thing, you had to pay attention, which I know is a good thing. I just find it's my big thing with a lot of the Star Wars TV shows we've had out, even including The Mandalorian, in the sense that they're just maybe 7 or 8 hour movies. They could easily be a 2-hour movie, and you could cut down. There's a lot of times where this film, it's a bit like the Hobbit movies, where it literally slows down and says, right, keep up. This is, you don't need to, have you been looking at your phone for the last half hour? It's all right. We'll tell you here. It's all right. Okay. So, this XYZ happened, and back then, all right, okay. It kind of, spoon feeds you a lot of stuff. It's fine. There's a Wookiee with a lightsaber, so what's not to like? But I think we are at the stage now, and I know we're recording as the big Comic-Con is getting underway. I'm sure there'll be a Star Wars panel, if not already been or will be. But we're at the stage where Disney haven't renewed a second season of The Acolyte. Maybe they will, a bit like Ahsoka. They'll take their time and eventually renew it. I don't know. But it was just, for me, it was stuff on a screen. Jedi stuff's always going to be cool, but I had no emotional engagement. And maybe the fact that the older man in the room, I quite liked Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan. And, there's been this whole retcon now of Hayden Christensen. Oh, wasn't he great as Darth Vader, really? No, he fucking wasn't. He was fucking shite. Here, let me do an impression of Hayden Christensen, particularly in Attack of the Clones. Yes, Master. I won't do it again, Master. He was fucking terrible. And he got a lot of nastiness, abuse at the time for it. So it's great that he's getting that moment. But let's just maybe put a lot of that blame on George Lucas. I don't know. But for me, I don't know about you, Adam, the kind of the TV show stuff, Obi-Wan's probably been my favourite, but even that could easily been a 2-hour movie.
Oh, 100%. And there is moments in that show that are stellar, like the last fight between him and Darth Vader, is fantastic. I would say out of the shows, probably Andor.
Oh, how did I forget it? Well, Andor is the one that I'm not even sure if I finished, because we were talking about it, and I was like, yeah, it's pretty amazing the way it finishes up, leaves a real cliffhanger for the second series when they all escape the prison. You're like, Jim, there's more episodes. There's more episodes. So I am going to hold my hand up. It's a Jim Wanker moment. I apologize, listeners. I had forgot about Andor. I love Andor. But and I know it's been renewed for a second season, but what I loved about Andor was, yes, it was a series, but it was kind of broke up into maybe 10 episodes, 8. I don't know how many episodes of Andor there was, but it was broke up into 3 different little movies. There's the heist, there's the prison sequence that I thought was the end, and then you have, isn't it the auntie from Harry Potter giving that big massive speech with the hologram? I think that is the true finale, isn't it?
Yeah, the fucking IRA Republican funeral. Andor is just such, it's a show that perfects the why Star Wars can be a TV show, whereas the other ones, like you say, why aren't they just movies? It kind of is funny that the next Star Wars movie we're getting is a Mandalorian movie, and you're like, but guys, what did this? What did this for 3 years?
But hey, Adam, more importantly with Andor, there's no lightsabers. I don't think there's a single Jedi, Sith in any of those episodes. I could be wrong.
Technically, there is a Jedi character, but he doesn't get his lightsaber out. I'll not say who it is. Jim's just made a face to be like, "You're a nerd." I think I've said before, the smuggler character in Star Wars is more appealing to me. Your Han Solos. I love the Solo movie. I watched it again last week. I think it's my most logged movie on Letterboxd. I have a problem. But the smuggler side of things is more interesting to me. So with the Acolyte going back into the history of the Jedi, it just, for them to be like, this is 100 years ago, and then sort of, bring up problems that you're like, so this problem lingered for 100 years, It's sort of like if they based it maybe 20 years before Phantom Menace, maybe that would have been a more appealing. You could have had a young Qui-Gon Jinn, you could have had Darth Tyrannus, Count Dooku, and then you could have had a young Palpatine. I think a young Palpatine series might have hit harder with fans rather than making up these two fucking boring characters.
Well, my limited Star Wars facts is that Palpatine and Plagueis, of course,
fucked.
Yeah, intertwined, because ultimately, is it not Palpatine that kills Plagueis?
Yeah, it's kind of like he's telling Anakin the story, and he's like, "Here, someone really class and good looking killed Darth Plagueis. And I'll tell you who though." Wink.
Look at this guy. But yeah, I'm sure it has its fans. I'll be interested. I know I haven't had him on the show for a wee while. Bill Taylor is he's cosplayer, director as well. Sixth Sense, massive Star Wars fan. But there's interested to see what Bill thinks of The Acolyte. And I know we're going to wrap up, but the last time we were recording the episode that no longer, well, at the minute is somewhere in the Nethersphere, we were talking about The Boys, because you had seen it. I hadn't seen an episode. I was waiting for them all to come out so I could just binge them. And I really enjoyed The Boys. I think it's this is the fourth series of The Boys. I think it's been the slowest to kind of really get going, and I know there's been a lot of, like The Acolyte, there's been a lot of reaction from fans. I think you might have made this reference before. It's the fact that people who love Homelander are suddenly realizing, here, hang on, he's Donald Trump. I really liked it, and I mean, I know that the fifth series is going to be the finale, although I think they've announced, talking of Comic-Con, there's going to be a prequel series with Soldier Boy. I know there's the college kind of, I don't know if it's a prequel, but if it's kind of like a adjacent series to what's going on, with kind of showing what's going on with the company of Vought. I enjoy The Boys for what it is, and yeah, I mean, I'll happily just watch Homelander just being an absolute cunt and hate him like I hate Donald Trump. I'll put my cards out there. I'm not sitting there going, oh fuck, I love Homelander. He's a horrible person, and I always love those jokes that go up, how America sees itself, and it's Henry Cavill's Superman, and then the reality, and it's Homelander. It's fucking true.
Yeah, it's a show that it's sort of like, do you remember when Rockstar were making like Vice City and San Andreas, and you would listen to the radio, and it was like that sort of satire that was so ridiculous but yet so true. And it is the same with The Boys. It is completely over the top, it is completely on the nose, but like I said, there is viewers of that show that watch Homelander and think he's class, but all for the wrong reasons. And then to have like a character like Firecracker on this season, with her TV show on CNN called Truth Bomb, that you're kind of like, it's so on the nose that I don't understand why the people Truth Bomb didn't get it. And it also could be that they do get it and they're just offended, But everything else about the show, I kind of didn't like that Butcher was separated from the rest of the boys for most of the season. There kind of is a, late in the season reveal about Butcher that everybody was like, well, obviously, it's sort of, you don't bring in, there's an actor that is with Butcher the whole time, that is a really good actor, but weirdly doesn't act with anybody else on the show. Wonder why.
Can I just ask you on that point? Because my lovely wife and I were talking about that, and we were kind of saying it's because Butcher is having visions of his dead wife. Anyone who knows that will know from the previous season and the legacy of what that's had, and he's haunted by his ex-wife who's given him advice on what he should do. Were you surprised when that, I'm trying to be as unspoilerific as I can, certain kind of revelations that then come out later on? It's like, of course it is.
I think it was shockingly obvious. And then they even have the cheek to be like, here's all these scenes where, he was meant to be talking to somebody, and you're like, fuck, I know. I don't know. I just like seeing that actor in things, so I was happy to have him in it. I know a lot of people got annoyed. We were talking last week about Deadpool and, sexual harassment stuff. A lot of people got annoyed at this season for Huey getting sexually abused in a couple of episodes, and I completely get that. And the showrunners have come out and talked about how it, they did it because it was funny. Don't completely agree with that completely, but I can see the angle they were coming with. And Huey is a character that from the start of the show has been our view into the world of the boys, and I think including season 4, him going into Tech Knight's sex dungeon and getting tickled while a woman masturbates is still in line with what the character originally was. I don't think there's nothing in the show that's fucking took a step up. Like Huey and Frenchie and Butcher in the second episode of the first season stick a bomb up Translucent's arse without his knowledge, which you could classify as sexual assault.
I think you would. I think the police would definitely say you're in that territory, Your Honor.
Yeah, so it's not beyond the show's realm that they're going to go this deep. And if you're going to have a show that, does deal with those sort of situations, including like Homelander and Becca, having Ryan, as a kid, they sort of touch on that a little bit. They do touch those situations subtly and with taste, and it maybe was a bit of a misstep with Huey being assaulted in the basement. But it obviously could have been worse. Tickling someone's feet isn't as bad as all the other stuff that I don't really want to get into. The rest of the characters kind of all just faff about for the season, and it's not bad as such, but you can, like I text you, it sort of feel like they've put the brakes on because they know they want to hold all the mad stuff for season 5.
Yeah, because Game of Thrones did this quite often. Game of Thrones did this, and everyone go, "Oh fuck, wasn't the Red Wedding? It was amazing." It's like, yeah, there was a lot of fucking chess pieces moving your places, episodes where it's literally like, we've got to get this character to here, that character needs to do this, that, and other, moving your pieces into place. And it's like, that can be not riveting TV at times. I totally agree, there is that here, although not for the kind of stuff that happens to poor little Huey in Tech Knight's dungeon. I quite like that was their version of Bruce Wayne in this, and I don't think I'll forget in a hurry their version of Spider-Man. There is times where the boys does kind of push it, but as you said, Adam, it's done that from season 1. And I guess there comes that sense where if they push stuff too far and they get it wrong, they have to hold their hands up. But also, it's like they're being true to the source material, which I've never read as much. There's others who I know will love it. I've dipped in and out of those books, graphic novels. Aaron Flanagan recommended a few over the years to kind of pick up and read, because The Boys isn't a massive run, I don't think.
71 issues, if I remember.
Yeah, not a massive run, so I haven't got them all. But it's went to the source material itself has went to some dark places. I think there's stuff in there that's just weird, and I always feel uncomfortable. There's stuff near the end with Firecracker, with how far she'll go to impress Homelander, and yeah, that's weird. And I don't really want to be the person who discovers his little jar, but yeah, I think I can't remember the name of the actor who plays Homelander, Anthony Starr. I just think I'm going to say this, right? This is Jim McClane. It's a ramble. It's not a fully filled out thought, but that type of character must be a joy to play. Even though he's a cunt, he's horrible, he's Donald Trump, and I guess the writers of The Boys, as we've went on, have modelled him more and more on Trump, because we've had a Trump presidency, and we've had his then fall from grace, and then his now re-election campaign. Now, since The Boys came on the TV show, since The Boys came on to Amazon Prime, you know, wasn't it Grant Morrison with The Boys?
Garth Ennis.
Garth Ennis, sorry, apologies. Garth Ennis, he didn't have that Trump presidency as a moulding point. They've clearly used that. They've used the source material. They're using the stuff with Trump, and I think it works. But I come back to, he's horrible. I don't like him in any way, but he must be a joy to play. And I love even more so the fact that Anthony Starr is terrified of heights. So when you see the videos when he has to go heights, he is literally shitting himself.
I think that Eric Kripke, the showrunner, is going to be campaigning more next year to get Anthony a Emmy nomination, and he's gonna send them the episode where Homelander goes back to where he was kind of born in a lab and sort of deals with the people that made him. And that episode is a real standout because it's, you know, there's a thin line. We were talking about long legs. There's a thin line between going over the top and being insane. You know, there's an easy way to play the, oh, I'm crazy and I'm gonna laugh like a madman. I'm looking at you, Jared Leto, as the Joker. And, you know, playing it where there's actual malice behind the eyes. And I think Anthony Starr plays that well. It's a guy that fucking, even though like the internet has taken to him as the meme king, because any reaction he has in the show is perfect for memes. There's a bit in the final episode where Firecracker coughs, and the look that Anthony Starr gives her fucking has made me laugh all week. I
love that, and I know it's become a lot because there's been a resurgence of COVID. You mentioned, unfortunately, yourself, you suffered from the lurgy. A lot of people have brought that back up. No, move further. Keep going. I also want to give a very quick shout out as well, just because I think I have slowly fallen in love with her throughout The Boys. I know I'm a happily married man, but Karen Fukuhara, if you're listening, what's happening? I have fallen in love with her and her character in this series, and I just want more. It's a bit like Mantis now in Guardians of the Galaxy, and I know her character is, you can't kill her, but if anything happens to her in season 5, we riot. I said that in Guardians 3 before I saw it, and any of the Avengers movies, if anything happens to Mantis, we riot. Thankfully, that didn't happen with Guardians 3, because of course we didn't riot. But if anything happens with season 5 with Karen Fukuhara's character, we will riot. Well, I will riot.
Can I give a quick shout out to Simon Pegg for a fucking stellar episode? I always say that The World's End is the best of the Cornetto trilogy because Pegg delivers a fucking real performance that is deep down. You know, you can tell he's pulling from a lot of his own life, and I would say that I don't know anything about Simon Pegg's personal life, but I would say that he probably did a similar thing here playing Huey's dad.
And also with Huey's mum as well. Interesting stuff as well there. But yeah, I'm excited for season 5. I know they've kind of described the ending of this series as its kind of Empire Strikes Back moment. Our heroes at their lowest end. We know season 5 is going to be the finale, but probably not the end of the Boys series, because we now, as I've mentioned, we're going to have this prequel series with Soldier Boy. Interesting to see what they do with that. I'm interested to an extent what they're going to do with that. I haven't bothered with the college set spin-off adjacent series. I don't know if you've watched that.
I watched the first episode when it came out and was like, not for me. And then whenever season 4 started, binged it, and it's fantastic. The characters in that are all really good, and obviously, you know, it's more from that world, and there's a lot of like Tech Knight is introduced in Gen V, and he has a storyline for 1 or 2 episodes that I think you'll probably really enjoy.
Okay, so I shall maybe seek that out. We're going to wrap up this pod, But as we're into August, we're into, as I say, festival season. They're happening all over. Edinburgh International Film Festival gets underway later this month with the UK premiere of I can't speak tonight. I know we're into August, so festival season is well underway. The Edinburgh International Film Festival will get underway in August. I know Alien Romulus will get its UK premiere there. A few other big titles hitting that festival. But also, we're going to have Fright Fest in London. So I thought we would reach out to your friend. You know Gav better than I do. I just know Gav from a couple of times we've had him on the podcast, a couple of times we've had him on the TV show, just with little segments. Never actually got him into the studio. Hopefully, Gav, if you're listening, maybe September, October time, we might coax him. Not that we don't like Danny.
Can I pitch something to you about? I was going to tell this to you in private, but if I put it on the pod and the listeners are like, that sounds good, then maybe we could do it. Joe McElroy came up with a fantastic idea where me and Danny do hot ones, but with sausage rolls. You have your Greggs, you have your garage-based sausage roll. What other place does sausage rolls? They got a Bougie Bistro, Bob and Bert's. Just think, don't know if we're gonna have hot sauce or just ketchup. But of course, if we're gonna have ketchup, it'll be Daddy's Red Sauce all the way. It's my username on PlayStation, Daddy's Red Sauce.
Don't really know what to go with that, but yeah, we'll talk about it. I like that. But yeah, we've not that we don't like having Danny on the pod and the TV show. Well, in the studio, we want to get Gav up into Belfast, so I thought we'd reach out to Gav. And if he could give a short rundown of some of the things he's particularly looking out for or we should seek out.
Hello peeps and creeps, Gav here from the Fright Club. On our latest episode of the Dissection podcast, we talk about Fright Fest, the UK's leading genre film festival and one of the most well-regarded film festivals in Europe. It takes place in London at the end of August. We'll be covering the festival remotely again for the third consecutive year, and I wanted to pick out 3 films that we're looking forward to watching this year. First up is the UK premiere of Azrael, Angel of Death. Directed by E.L. Katz and starring the wonderful Samara Weaving, the film is set in an apocalyptic future and follows a young woman named Azrael, who has finally escaped the clutches of a ruthless religious cult. The film reportedly has very little dialogue as most of the characters are entirely mute. The script was written by Simon Barrett, who also wrote You're Next and The Guest, which we're big fans of, and more recently Godzilla vs. Kong: The New Empire. Well, let's move on. Next up is The Dead Thing, which is being hailed as the best thing to happen to independent horror in a very long time. Wow, that's quite a statement. It's a neon realistic take on the Invisible Man that will revolve around a modern online dating service. It just had its world premiere at Fantasia in Montreal, and Fright Fest will be its international premiere. Directed by Elric Kane, who also co-writes. Podcast fans might recognise his name from the Colours of the Dark pod on the Fangoria network. Last but not least is a film called Antaivsha, meaning the ghost. It's shot entirely in the Irish language, the first horror film of its kind to be released, and is directed by Newry-based filmmaker John Farley, with the majority of the cast being from Northern Ireland. It's produced by 6-time Oscar nominee Jim Sheridan, and is a bone-chilling tale set against the haunting backdrop of Ireland's infamous famine era. We'll definitely have a review for this one after its screening at Fright Fest, and an exclusive interview with the director on our website leading up to the event. If you want to hear me, Joe and Adam talk more about this year's Fright Fest, and a little bit about some of our previous Fright Fest films that we've reviewed in the past, and as always gantch a fair amount of nonsense too, then please check out our latest episode of The Dissection, a podcast that carefully dissects the latest headline news from the world of horror film, TV, and everything and anything beyond. You can find all the links to the podcast and our YouTube channel on all our socials, and be sure to check our socials and website for all the upcoming Fright Fest film reviews and exclusive interviews.
That's Gav talking about all things Fright Fest, and as I said, check out the Dissection podcast. I think they're about 8 or 9 episodes deep now, I think, in their maiden run, and I've checked in on a couple of episodes. A lot of fun. You've been on a few, Adam, I think.
Yep, 2 so far. There's a fantastic interview with the Addams family, not the clicky fingers ones, but the filmmakers that made Hellbender, and Where the Devil Roams, I think was the other one. But the new movie is called Hellhole. And our Joe gave a fantastic interview with the two members of the Addams family. That was really insightful interview, and they have a cheeky Belfast connection, but I'll let you listen to the episode to get those connections.
Okay, so you've that to look out for the dissection. We'll have a link on the podcast link here. I think we'll bring things to a close. So, as I say, we've talked loads this week of told everything from MaXXXine, Beverly Hills Cop 4, Chuck Chuck Baby. We've got, as we've mentioned, a little bit of Fright Fest in there. So, packed podcast. We'll be back next week as we begin our month of all things Spider-Man related nonsense. So you've got that to look forward to. Of course, seek out our back catalogue, check out the website, the events guide, movie news, movie reviews. Check the YouTube page to find old episodes of the TV show as well. And yeah, Adam, all that's left for me to do now is thank you once again for giving up your time. So thank you very much, Adam.
Thank you, Jim.
And thank you very much for listening. We'll be back next week with another podcast. But for now, until then, goodbye.